Welcome, welcome. I'm very excited to have this conversation. Folks, the person on the screen right now is George from CryptosRUs, and there's a lot of things I have to ask you, but before we get into that, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. You got me at a good time because I actually sound normal. I just recovered from a sickness and I sound really bad, but I'm feeling good today.
I think we're going to have a good chat. Now, one of the first things I want to get into is when I was doing some research on you, you've been creating content for a while. In fact, the better part of a decade, I would actually argue when you're one of the longest lasting crypto content creators. So I want to talk about the crypto side, but also the content side. So I guess we could start, but how'd you get into content? How'd you get into crypto? And how did you end up melding the two together?
Oh, I never want to be on screen. Honestly, I'm more of an introvert. I never wanted to get on screen, but I got wrecked in 2008, 2009 after the housing bubble crash, right? And I was already investing. By that point, I lost everything. And I really, really did not pay attention to anything until 2013 when I heard about this magical digital currency, Bitcoin, that hit $1,000 for the first time in history, right? And that, unfortunately, I could have been in earlier because my career beforehand was in IT, right? Wow. But then, because I got so burnt by all the money lost in 2008, I didn't pay attention in 2013. And then I learned about Bitcoin. I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. So I got into mining in 2013, 2014. Unfortunately, I didn't know anything about it. And when things started coming down, it got bad. I sold out. And then I came back in 2017 when I heard Bitcoin once again hit $1,000. And then I realized, man, I missed out. I had so many, I could have kept it rather than, selling it, right? So 2017 is when I started really digging into Bitcoin and all the other crypto at that time, which more or less were all copycats of Bitcoin. It's not like today. Back then it was like Litecoin and Feathercoin and they're all just basic copies of each other. Dogecoin was around back then, but I started, getting myself in tune, started doing Q&A really with people that were asking questions on the site Kohrs. And then I started my website, CryptosRUs.com. And this was towards the end of 2017 when Bitcoin really started coming up. Ethereum also just got released. It was really exciting time. And then someone told me, hey, you got to go on YouTube. You got to get yourself out there. And I'm like, I really don't want to be on YouTube. I don't know how to talk. I'm not handsome. I'm not, charismatic. I can't compete with those guys on YouTube, right? But this person's like, just do it, right? And I thought, I'm just going to do it. And I did. And I did pretty well on my channel because it was the late half of 2017 when Bitcoin hit 20,000. Everyone was FOMOing. So my channel grew to 40,000 subscribers really quickly. But then, of course, what happened? Then the market started coming down. And then I struggled. And my channel really, really struggled. I couldn't even get 1,000, views per video. But, during the time, I kept up with it. I'm like, I'm not going to leave once again. First of all, I believe in Bitcoin and crypto that much. And second of all, I started doing a lot of research on just, YouTube influencers and people that put out videos about how to succeed on YouTube. Right. And, I started doing a lot of research. But one thing I noticed is consistency. Right. A lot of people get burned out or they're not consistent because they lose interest or whatever. And I'm like, I'm going to outwork all these guys. No matter what, I'm just going to put out one video every day and we'll see how it goes. And I did that from 2018 all the way until 2021. My channel really did not blow up, did not have any movement. And in fact, for 3 months, YouTube banned my channel because at that time, it was during 2020 because of COVID, YouTube told everyone to go home. and they had like an automation thing where they try to detect, spamming channels and stuff, and they associate all these crypto channels being spammy, and then they just automatically ban. And my channel got banned for like 3 to 4 months, and that was horrible. When I got it back, I had even less traction than before, but I still did not give up. And in 2020, when the bull market came back, that's when more people recognized me. And then my channel blew up in 2021 and in 2022, and still going strong in 2023. So I know I said a lot, but that's kind of like the beginning to now.
Wow. No, I appreciate that. One quick question. How did you come up with the name CryptosRUs? What's the birth of that?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I should share that. Yeah, I think you could tell. You could guess, right?
I was thinking Toys R Us.
Yeah, that's
Oh, okay.
it.
I just didn't know if
like,
there was some other meaning to it.
yeah, everyone else was using their name or something
Okay.
like Crypto Bobby or whatever. I'm like, let's try to think something else.
Okay.
And Toys R Us was still around back then. I'm like, all right, Cryptos R Us.
I like it. In rewinding to the start of it, in 2008, it sounds like you obviously had an equity portfolio. So to this point in time, do you still at all trust in equities? Let's even say the overall market. Do you still invest, or is it just purely crypto at this point?
No, I still believe in equities. Of course,
Okay.
I still believe in the big guys. In terms of one thing, well, there's a couple things I've learned over the years. One thing is, again, it doesn't matter if it's equities or crypto, you have to have patience. Way too many people try to outsmart the market or out trade the market, and they end up losing either all of it or some of it, but most of them lose. The key is to have patience, buy low when other people are fearful, and sell high when other people are greedy. That's really the magic formula that most people just do not listen to, right? So that's number one. So yes, I got burned many times before in equities and crypto, and that's something I learned. You just have to have patience. You hold on to the strong crypto or equities, and then that's it. You hold it, or you DCA throughout the lows and wait for the gains to come to you. Number two, and this relates to only equities, is I don't see any reason why anyone should hold anything outside of the top big tech companies out there. Like, I really think it's absolutely, I would go as far as say almost idiotic to hold anything else other than like the big five. And who are the big five? Well, like Apple, Microsoft, you throw Google in there, throw Tesla in there, you throw Nvidia in there. That's five. If you wanted to add Facebook or Amazon, you can. But these top five, you look at their year-to-year performance. Okay, even during recession times, yes, they go down, but you average out their year-to-year performance over the last decade or 2 decades, they're thousands of percents. And then you look at like regular, companies like, I don't know, Johnson Johnson, P&E, Travelers Insurance, like AT&T, Verizon. They go up like maybe 5% a year at most. And, it just makes no sense. I guess some people may want to buy and hold those equities for dividends reasons. And they feel like, oh, I want to collect my 5 or 6% dividend, right? But if you're holding equities, you hold on to these big tech, high growth companies. They're not going to go away. They're not going to go bankrupt. They keep getting bigger and eating away everything. So that's also something I learned. Like, why would you hold anything else besides the top five? Really, that's it.
And I'm assuming you have that same sort of mantra in the world of crypto. So is it just Bitcoin, Ethereum? Is the list just Bitcoin, or is it a bigger list than Bitcoin and Ethereum?
No, with crypto is a little bit different because crypto is still, I see crypto market as the tech sector in like the 90s and early 2000s. Okay, we have big established projects like Ethereum. Okay, Ethereum is definitely established, and I'm moving Bitcoin from this picture because Bitcoin doesn't really compete with anything else. Bitcoin is a digital gold. It's a store of value, medium exchange, and you could argue, it's a hedge against inflation, right? But everything else in this space is more like a tech company, a startup tech company. Yes, evaluations are kind of skewy because a lot of these companies are already worth billions, but they are still trying to figure it out and starting to grow, and adding more to their, I guess, ecosystem.
Yeah.
So, outside of Ethereum, which is already established, I mean, they're still small though. Everything else, I could say Binance Smart Chain or Polygon or Avalanche, Solana, Cardano. These guys barely scratch the surface. As big as they are, or seem they are, they're really small still. They haven't onboarded a major dApp that supports millions of users yet, right? We haven't seen that one viral app that supports 10 million users, right? We don't see that yet. We see a lot of DeFi stuff, decentralized finance, right? Which, yeah, we have a lot of users, but that's about it. Most of the volume is all attributed to trading. That's it.
Gotcha.
We don't see these viral social apps yet, although some popped up recently. Social apps or games specifically. We don't have really any killer games yet. But that's why it's early, right? So with crypto, to answer your question, it's not just the big five, although they are the most solid and they do move very well. I do diversify a little bit more into like the mid and small caps because they do move the most in a bull market. And, everyone's still trying to figure it out. So I think it's good to diversify a little bit.
It seems like you have a very similar mindset of investing of some of the most successful investors in our time. And on that note, I'm curious if you've ever heard of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger's commentary on crypto. I think Charlie Munger himself, who he's almost infamous for really not holding his tongue, he referred to crypto itself as, I think, a venereal disease and rat poison. Obviously, you being a big supporter of Bitcoin and crypto as a whole, don't agree with that. But like, where do you think the disconnect is? Do you think it really is age related and he just doesn't see where it's going? Or like, where do you think it is of why you have such a different opinion than some of these other very, I guess, well-respected, famous long-term investors?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those arguments. It's kind of like a lose-lose situation, right? Because number one is, yeah, I think they're wrong, but I'm not worth $100 billion. So who am I to say that they're wrong, right? Like there's always this argument. If you're so smart, why are you not as rich as them? Well, opportunity, it's not the same now versus before. But here's why I feel like they're wrong. First of all, they are extremely old. Okay, let's not dance around that. They're both in their 90s, close to 100, right? So how they invested and the companies they invested back 100 years ago are very different than now. Tech really didn't explode until the 90s and 2000s, right? After dot-com bubble, a lot of the major companies that we see today, came out of that period, right? Warren Buffett made his money by investing what he knows, like banks, a lot of banks. If you look at his portfolio, it's all banks, right? Banks and financial institutions like credit cards and stuff. But here's the funny thing, and I don't have the exact numbers. I'm sure you could dig it up. Anyone watching could dig this up. If you look at the biggest growth in his portfolio over the last 10 years by a long shot, which company? It was Apple. Apple basically made his portfolio go up single-handedly within the last 10 years. Ever since Warren Buffett finally admitted that he missed out on a lot of tech sector, like almost everything in tech, and then he finally admitted and caved and said, okay, I'm going to add some Apple, and he's been continuing to add more and more Apple. That's the only reason why his portfolio has been doing well, just because of that one company. If you look at the list of everything else, like Citibank and Bank of America and all the banks and everything, railroads and airlines and Coca-Cola, everything else that he has in there that produce commodities because he loves commodities, and I get that, right? They're producing a product. They have not been gaining at all. So it's obvious that, he came up from a different time that's very different than now, right? And I don't know why they both hate Bitcoin so much, because they probably can't believe the returns that it has produced over the last 13 years. I think that's probably the biggest reason. I'm sure they have seen a lot. I'm sure they've seen a lot of Ponzi schemes go up very fast and then go down very fast, right? And I think because they don't understand it, they just equate it to the same thing. This must be a Ponzi scheme that is hot right now, and it'll come back down. Well, this Ponzi machine has been ongoing for 13 years, right? So when is it going to come down? It's only getting stronger, and every single cycle it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The answer to that is it's not a Ponzi scheme, so it's not going to come down, right? But I think it's just too late for them to admit to that, right? It's kind of their stick now. A lot of these Bitcoin naysayers, they have to say that they're not Bitcoiners. Like another one, Peter Schiff, who's a big gold guy. He'll never admit anything good about Bitcoin because, that's just his stick. It's like, I hate Bitcoin. So that's the reason why I think that's why they don't like Bitcoin.
You just mentioned Peter Schiff and obviously gold. And before you talked about Bitcoin being digital gold. And obviously it's commonly thought that gold is a store of value, especially in an inflationary environment. And I'm sure you get this question a lot. But right now, having a 2-decade high level of inflation, why aren't we seeing digital gold, aka Bitcoin, go up right now? And also, to be fair, the reason I'm thinking about gold is gold itself is actually not going up. The last time I checked it, even though we're sitting at whatever inflation rate, gold is actually kind of recently dipping. So more so on the side of digital gold, aka Bitcoin, why are we not seeing it continue to rip now?
Well, the thing is, okay, there's a couple sides to this argument. You have one side, which is this 4-year cycle. Okay. If you ignore everything else and you just look at Bitcoin's, how it moves, its history, basically it moves based on 4 years. Why? Because every 4 years, there's this event called a halving event, which decreases its inflation rate by half. So right now it's about 6.125 Bitcoin's being released every block, which is every 10 minutes. That's going to get cut down to 3 something next year, right? So if you look at Bitcoin's price movement, it has been doing the same thing every single time, meaning let's just start from the halving event. That's kind of like a baseline. And then after a halving event, shortly afterwards, we start seeing the price go up tremendously to a FOMO top, parabolic top, and then the bubble bursts and it goes back down and it goes to a new low, right? And then it kind of sits there for a while, recovers until it gets back to the halving event, and then it starts over, right? Okay. So if we're just looking at a 4-year cycle, we are exactly where we should be. Our low of this year in the very beginning was 15,000. That was the beginning of the year. So we're almost up 100% right now, year to date. If you look at Bitcoin's history and you go back all the way to the beginning, annualized return for Bitcoin is 144% per year. Per year. That's a great return, including the down years, So imagine if you took out on down years, how well the good years did, right? So looking at that perspective, I think we are exactly where we are. We're closing in at 28,000 right now, closing in close to 30,000, right? And we're off from our bottom, right? And here's the thing: with the bottoms, they keep getting higher. Every single bottom that we form with every single cycle is higher. The same thing with the top, right? So we make higher lows and higher highs. Keep in mind, it was not too long ago, in March of 2020, Bitcoin fell below $4,000 to 3,800. Okay, most people forget that. That was not that long ago. That Bitcoin was below 4,000, and now we're at 28,000, right? That's a tremendous jump. So there's that aspect. So that's number one. Number two is, you know what? When the macro conditions are bad, everything is bad, which is why gold also has not risen up to the moon too. When you have this massive event, okay, I'll just say the COVID event, right? When everyone is fearful, everyone sells off everything. That's just human psychology. It's like, if I don't know what's going on and I'm fearful of tomorrow, let's just sell off everything, right? And 2022 and 2023, we've been in constant fear because of Fed Chair Powell and his constant rate hikes, right? Nonstop rate hikes, rate hike. And then, of course, we see, other factors like the U.S. government irresponsibly adding more debt to its balance sheet, keep printing more money, right? So there's a lot of fear. And then you got a lot of people saying, well, this is death of the dollar, right? We're going to go deeper in recession, or we might go into depression. And you got everyone guessing. But what they're doing is causing a lot of fear. So when there's a lot of fear out there, does anything do well? The answer is no. Everything's kind of suppressed, right? We're not back to COVID levels, but we're kind of like just kind of hovering, like equities also kind of like, we kind of peaked in July, yeah. And then we came back down and we're kind of hovering down, right? Everything's kind of suppressed right now. So that's another reason, because the macro conditions are so uncertain right now and there's so much fear. It's kind of hard to see one asset class like Bitcoin just skyrocket to the moon while everything else is low, right? Because the money is just not there. The money is sitting on the sidelines.
Gotcha.
But there are a lot of money out there that's waiting to come in. It just hasn't happened yet. So I think it's just a combination of these two things. That's why Bitcoin has not skyrocketed back up to its previous high, but it's just a matter of time.
I want to get your thoughts on this. Another reason of why here maybe it's not there is what you really said of the money on the sideline. But I think part of that is the current state of regulations in the SEC, and really just the fact that we don't have a spot Bitcoin ETF, which means the $10 to $12 trillion retirement money economy in the US, none of that can get exposure, even through an ETF or anything like that. So if we think of it as something as basic as almost regulatory highway on-ramps into the Bitcoin sphere or the crypto sphere, no Wall Street money can really pull that off. Like, yeah, maybe there's some like nuance cases here and there, but in terms of billions, if not trillions of dollars, that exposure is not there, at least at this moment in time. Do you think that's a fair, another thing to add on?
Yeah. One thing you have to keep in mind is when you buy Bitcoin, physical Bitcoin, you have to worry about storing it, right? For retail investors like you and I, we can store it on a wallet. There you go. But if you're a big institution and you're buying $100 billion, let's say, of Bitcoin, and that might be too high. Let's say $100 million worth of Bitcoin, you have to store somewhere. Are you really going to trust your IT guy to just hold it in a ledger in the data room, right? Probably not. So you have to worry about, paying for a custodian like Coinbase or someone else to hold it, right? And it gets complex. I'm sure with certain industries, there are certain regulations that have to abide by, certain audits that have to abide by. The accounting is, not favorable yet, but soon. But, there's a lot of things that companies will worry about. And especially like if you're like a pension fund, a retirement fund, for them to just go straight into Bitcoin and hold Bitcoin is extremely risky and difficult and cumbersome, right? So for them to be able to just buy stocks from a spot Bitcoin ETF fund, right? It makes sense for them. That's what they're used to, and they don't have to worry about all the extra stuff. Let the fund companies worry about that. So I think number one is, besides just the money, just the complex, I guess, nature of getting into crypto is removed from spot Bitcoin with spot Bitcoin ETFs, right?
Gotcha.
But when you remove that complexity, well, then it's much easier for people to invest, right? So these large fund companies, I think they can definitely put in. It's anticipated right now anywhere between 200 to 400 billion that will flow into Bitcoin after spot Bitcoin ETF gets approved. That's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's just the beginning too. I think, there's retail investors that want to get in as well. Some that, again, even though they're retail, they don't want to mix with everything. They just want to use their brokerage account and go buy some Bitcoin ETFs. So I think with the coming bull market, you're going to see an influx of FOMO from retail investors and institutional investors, right? They're all going to be jumping in, and spot Bitcoin ETFs just helps the process. It's another way to onboard people into the space, so to speak. So I think it's tremendous.
If you don't necessarily know the exact answer, I guess I'm looking for your best guess. These people who are buying at size, are they doing cold wallets and storing it in some fancy schmancy safe? Or how do you do it? Like, I guess we threw out the number of just 100 million, whatever it is. Right. Do you have any idea of how that is actually properly, safely stored?
Yeah, we see it all the time. We see it all the time. Like if you look at, there's a lot of analytic companies that will look at the wallet from like Coinbase, for example, or Kraken or Gemini. And all of a sudden you see a massive 1 billion or 500 million or 400 million Bitcoin leave from their exchange, right? That's exactly what's happening. Basically, one of these big guys went to Coinbase and said, I want to buy, $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, right? So they would remove it from, and this is considered OTC sale. So this is not on the spot market.
Mhm.
So basically, Coinbase is like, okay, I got this much to sell. You want to buy it at this price? I'm going to sell it to you, right? And then Coinbase will transfer it to whatever custodian that they want to hold this. I mean, there's a lot of custodians out there. A lot of banks are acting like custodians. Coinbase is probably the biggest and most reliable. I don't know if that's true, if it's the most reliable, but definitely one of the biggest. But there's other ones out there that act as custodians, right? And then you basically give it and trust it with these guys, right? And their system, of course, is foolproof. It's cold, so meaning once you transfer to that wallet, they unplug it, they're monitoring it 24/7, right? And they do all the audit checks and everything. That does happen all the time, and we could see that.
Gotcha.
Whenever you see like a $400 million drop in Bitcoin reserves on exchange, it's not because retail investors decided to sell $400 million worth of Bitcoin. It's because it's being offloaded somewhere, right?
Gotcha.
And yeah, so it definitely happens all the time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I never really thought of it to this moment. Speaking of which, another thing I never thought of, obviously, you seem to be of the mindset of you buy Bitcoin, you hold it, when it's low, you dollar cost average. And that's a classic investing technique. But talking about the technical aspects of Bitcoin, this 4-year cycle and the halvings, is it really that crazy of an idea to almost do 3 years on, 1 year off? Like, is that the most insane? Oh, like, is obviously not investing, but also it's a little too long term to be called trading. So I'm almost like a longer duration swing trade of hold it for 3 years and then just take 1 year out and then come back in. Is that like that ludicrous of an idea?
No, it's just that sometimes you're hit with a surprise, right?
Mhm.
I'll give you an example. In 2021, we had a double top for Bitcoin. Bitcoin shot up to 64,000. And then it crashed to 28,000 because I think people thought the same thing, like, okay, this is the top, it better sell. And then it went from 28,000 all the way back to 69,000. And I'm sure people FOMO in back then, the ones who sold, thinking, well, this is a mistake. And then obviously after 69,000, we went down again. So sometimes you're thrown a curveball, right? Like you don't know exactly when the top is. You could kind of guesstimate. Same thing with the bottom. You could kind of guesstimate when the bottom is, but you just don't know. So if you're truly an investor, and you're in it for a long haul, you're like, okay, I'm just going to accumulate as many Bitcoins as I can in my lifetime, right? It doesn't mean that you can't take profits. It doesn't mean that you can't take some off the table and lock in the profit. But why go through all that? Why go through the guessing game when my life mission is just go accumulate more and more and more? And I think with every cycle, because of the money that's in, because the dollar value goes higher, the peaks and valleys are going to diminish, right?
Mhm.
We're not going to see the same kind of drops. For example, our last drop in 2022, we saw Bitcoin go down 77%, which is significant. But the previous cycle before that, Bitcoin went down 85%. And the cycle before that, it went down 89%, right? So obviously we're seeing the effect of that already. It's just not going down as much.
Mhm.
Part of that is due to, less manipulation because the dollar amount is higher. Some of it is probably due to the long-term holders that keep on accumulating, right?
Gotcha.
So, with that in mind, this next cycle, you can logically say, okay, by the end of 2025, maybe like October, November, December-ish of 2025, I'm gonna sell it all. And I'm gonna time to buy back in, right? But then you don't know where the bottom is. This time around, is the bottom maybe 60% off from top? Is it 50% off? Maybe we only have a 30% drop and we keep
Mhm.
on going because now with spot Bitcoin ETFs, with the institutions holding hundreds of billions to trillions of Bitcoin, maybe we just don't go down as much anymore, right? So then it becomes a guessing game. So, that's kind of my perspective. Again, I'm not saying everyone should just hold 100% all the time, right? I think it's very smart to take off the table, to take some off the table. I think, for me, I think like 30% in cash is good. So it doesn't matter if you're in a bear market or a bull market. If the bull market comes and then you see that cash pile diminish, take some off the table, right? And keep it at 30%. So that way, even if we do hit top and we start coming down, that 30% is plenty for you to DC along the way until the next cycle top, right? Same to the bottom. If you can't take off the table because you're in the red, well, you just have to figure out other ways to replenish that cash pile from your earnings or from a side gig or something like that. So that's kind of how I view it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I have a fun question for you. If I
Okay.
gave you $10 million right now, I came to your place, put it on your lap, and this 10 million had to be invested for the next decade or two, how would you split it up? Would it be crypto? Would it be crypto equities? Would it be real estate? Would you dig a hole in your backyard? 10 million in cash, what would you do with it?
10 million. Okay. I would, if this was like a contest, let's say, to make the most money that you can
Yeah.
within, I don't know, X amount of years, I would go all in crypto,
Really?
especially now.
Okay.
Especially now. Okay. Because I truly believe we're coming off from bottom. We're going to have a fantastic year in 2024 and even better in 2025. This is definitely the time to be in it. Now, I would not go 100% all in right now. I would probably put in 50% and hold 50% in cash. Okay.
Okay.
But I would not dare to put anything in real estate right now because real estate market is softening for sure. Prices are coming down. You know, who knows how much is going to go down, maybe another 10%, 15%, 20%. But real estate is going to come down because we know for sure mortgage rates are sky high. People are just can't afford to buy the same kind of homes they could before when interest rates were below 3% on a 30-year mortgage. Now it's at 7.5 or 8%. You know, the homes that people can afford are just very different, right? And now we're seeing softening with the economy too, with job market getting a little bit weaker, right? We're seeing the job data, you know, the which one? The payroll report starting to come down, right? I mean, overall, you know, people are spending less. So that means real estate market is a horrible one to get into right now. But you look at equities, I think equities could still do fine, but a little rocky right now. But crypto is definitely the one to be in my opinion. I would put about 50% in cash, 50% in crypto, and I'll probably spread that 50% in crypto probably among probably like within 10, right?
Oh, okay.
Vast majority of it in Bitcoin, a lot of it in Ethereum, and kind of spread the rest with some of the other ones that I like. And then just wait and see, basically kind of slowly DCA into those over time with the remaining 50%, right?
Gotcha.
Maybe until I get to that 30% mark in cash, and then I stop and wait. But yeah, you know, nothing is going to outperform crypto in the next 2 years, especially with this next run. It won't even be close.
What a phenomenal answer. Very well thought out. Well, that's the time we have for today. I truly appreciate everything you had to say. Now, for the folks who just want to know more of what you're up to and what you're doing, where's the best place they can find you on the internet?
Well, I stream almost every day, twice daily on CryptosRUs, which is my YouTube channel. In case you can't catch my live videos, I do have a side channel called CryptosRUs Clips, which are short clips for my mainstream, right? And also, I have started a new channel with new hosts called CryptosRUs Plus. But if people really want to watch me, they have never seen me, want to learn about what I've just said and more, you should definitely check out CryptosRUs. So I have a lot of good content in there.
All right, awesome. Folks, everyone listening, I'll make sure that's in the description of the video, so it's just one click away. But George, we appreciate your time, and hopefully we could talk again soon in the future.
Thanks for having me. This was great.